Hey mathematics learners, welcome to Distance Learning with Lee, where I make learning mathematics super easy. So on today's video tutorial guys, we are going to be tackling question 4 from the grade 11 mathematical literacy paper 1 that was written in November 2022 by the Eastern Cape Province learners. Guys, remember that we're using this paper to just help us revise concepts that we have basically learned throughout the whole year, right? And in question 4.1 guys, we are basically dealing with income and expenditure. Okay, so before we get started with today's video tutorial guys, please make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. Please make sure that you click on that notification bell so that you get notified every single time I upload a new video tutorial guys. And also please don't forget to give this video tutorial a huge thumbs up, because that really helps the channel grow and it helps the channel to reach more learners that want to better their mathematics marks. So without any further ado guys, let's get started with today's video tutorial. So like I mentioned guys, in today's video tutorial, we are going to be tackling question 4.1. And question 4.1 guys deals with income and expenses, right? Or income and expenditure, right? So we're going to be looking at the income as well as the expenses that Miss Jenna basically makes from her shoe repair business. And we're also going to be drawing a line graph, all right, using the information that is given to us in table 2, and also then from that line graph we are going to determine what the break-even point is. Okay, so let's have a look. We've got four questions actually. We've got 4 questions that we're going to be going through, so please make sure that you pay attention. Okay, so let's get started. It says Miss Gina started a shoe repair business to repair old shoes, restore their quality and make them user-friendly. Below are the weekly costs and charges that are involved. Okay, so she basically rents a room and that costs her 250. She pays salaries that costs her 400 rand. The materials that are required per pair of shoes on average costs her 25 rand, right? And on average each customer is charged 75 rand per pair of shoes. Okay, then we're given the formula that we can use to calculate the income that Miss Gina makes from her business, right? And we are told that the letter N, right, basically represents the number of pairs of shoes. Okay, we're also given the formula that we can use to calculate Miss Gina's expenses, and that formula is 650 plus 25 rand multiplied by N, right? And we are told that N represents the number of pairs of shoes. Okay, so it says use the information to answer the following questions. It says write down the weekly total fixed costs that Miss Jenna pays per week. Okay, so guys, here we need to write down what are her total fixed costs, right, that she basically pays, right, per week. How do we determine fixed costs? Okay, so before we even start off to calculate Miss Jenna's total fixed cost that she pays per week, we need to understand what are fixed costs, especially when we're looking at the context of a business, right? So you guys need to remember, when we're talking about a fixed cost, right, in a business, these are the costs, right, that remain the same, they remain constant, right? You need to pay these costs either every week, every month, every year, irrespective, right, of how many items you have basically sold in your business, right? So let's say, for example, I have a maths learning center, okay, and I'm renting out a place, right, for that maths learning center where kids come in or learners come in to get tutored for mathematics, right? And there are certain costs that I need to pay for my learning center. I have to pay, let's say, for example, the tutors that work in the learning center, I need to pay the rent, right? And then there are also other costs that come in to the business. And this is the amount that the learners basically pay into my Maths Learning Center every month that they come to basically get the lessons. Okay, so from that, right, there are certain costs that remain fixed. What are those costs that I need to always pay every month, irregardless of the fact that the learners come in or not? It's the rent. I need to pay the rent. Okay, it remains fixed. Okay, I need to pay, for example, the tutors that work in the center. It remains fixed. Okay, so the fixed costs are the costs that remain constant, irregardless, irrespective of the number of learners that come into the Maths Learning Center to get lessons per month. And then what would be the variable costs, right? Variable costs are then the costs that now change, okay, depending on whether you've got learners coming in or not. For example, let's say in February, okay, I've got 20 learners that come in for lessons, okay, and then in March, I've got 15 learners. So do you see that then the amount of learners that come in to get lessons every month, right, changes, right? And therefore, if we had to basically determine variable costs, we will be including the costs involved when it comes to the number of learners that come per month for a lesson. Okay, so it's very important that you guys understand that when it comes to your income and expenses, what is a fixed cost, what is a variable cost. Okay, so in this context then, right, the question wants us to determine or write down the weekly total fixed costs that Miss Jenna pays per week. So we need to look at what are the costs that she pays that are fixed, right? It does not depend on the number of shoes that she sells. So we need to look at the information that is given to us and then determine what are those costs. Okay, so when we look at the information that is given to us, what are the costs there, right? We see that the rent for the room is the fixed cost, right? She needs to pay the rent for the room, okay, regardless of how many shoes she makes. Okay, she needs to pay that 250. That is a fixed cost. The salary of her workers, that is a fixed cost. She needs to pay that, right? What about the materials required per pair of shoes? Is that a fixed cost? No, right? That is not a fixed cost because the material depends on the amount of shoes that Miss Jenna will have to produce. Okay, so we're not going to include the materials when we basically are determining our fixed cost. Okay, so then we can basically answer this question. The total fixed cost is the rent for the room of 250 plus the salary of 400, giving us total fixed cost of 650. Okay, so like I mentioned, the total fixed cost for Miss Jenna's business per week is equal to 650. Okay, let's have a look at the next question. Question 4.1.2. The table 2 below shows the income and the expenses from the business, right? So we are given table 2 and it says this is the income and expenses for the shoe repair business, okay? The top row basically gives us the number of a pair of shoes. Those are the number of pairs of shoes. Okay, the second row gives us the expenses for those shoes. And the third row gives us the income that Miss Jenna gets from selling those shoes. Okay, so with question 4.1.2a, we are told that we need to calculate the missing value A. Okay, so what is the missing value A there? What is represented there? We basically want to determine what are the expenses, right, for Miss Jenna, right, if she sells 20 pair of shoes. Okay, so remember when we basically started off this question, we're given formulas that we can use here at the top to calculate the income as well as the expenses. Okay, and we're given this formula to calculate the expenses, and that formula is expenses is equal to 650 plus 25 rand multiplied by 8. So we're going to use this formula to help us determine what's the missing value A, because the missing value A, right, is what? The expenses. All right, so we're going to quickly just substitute our N into the formula. Remember, N stands for the number of pairs of shoes, right? And we already know that on this column, right, the number of pairs of shoes is equal to 20. So basically, when we see the N, we're going to substitute 20 and determine then what the expenses are. Okay, so let's just quickly do that. Okay, so the formula says expenses is equal to 650 plus 25 rand multiplied by, okay, so we're going to substitute our in, so it's going to be 650 plus 25 rand multiplied by in. What is it? Our in, we saw that this is 20 pairs of shoes, right? And then if you punch that into your calculator, what do you get? Okay, remember, if you just want to do this arithmetically, right, BODMAS, okay, you're going to start off with the multiplication, right? So it's going to be 650 plus 25 multiplied by 20, okay? So 25 multiplied by 20 is equal to 500, right? And therefore 650 plus 500, that will give you 1,150. Okay, so the total expenses then, right, for Miss Jenna, if she makes 20 pairs of shoes, is 1,150. Cool stuff. Let us go into the next question. Question B. It says Miss Jenna has learned that starting a business is not easy. Okay, it takes time to get your business known. Her records show that in week 1 she repaired 5 pairs of shoes. In week 2 she repaired 10 pairs of shoes. In week 3 she repaired 20 pairs of shoes. Okay, so we see that basically here in this first row, that basically shows us the number of shoes that Miss Jenna repaired. Okay, so we need to use the information above as well as table 2 to show by means of calculation that Miss Jenna made a loss of 200 in the 3 weeks. Okay, so for us to be able to determine whether Miss Jenna made a loss, right, in the 3 weeks, okay, the best way that will help you guys see this, right, is for us to determine what was the profit that she made in week 1. Okay, what was the profit that she made in week 2, okay, and what was the profit then that Miss Jenna made in week 3, right? Once we have all the profit, okay, whether it's a negative profit or a positive profit, right, taking into consideration that if we get a negative profit, that basically shows us that Miss Jenna made a loss, right, in that week. And if we've got like a positive value, that would show us that, okay, in that week she basically made a profit. Okay, so in this case, if we basically get all the profits and then we add them together, then we will be able to then determine the loss that she made, okay, in the 3 weeks, and we'll be able to prove that she made a loss of 200 rand. Okay, so I'm going to take that approach to help you guys see that she actually makes a loss of 200 rand. Okay, so like I mentioned, we're going to calculate the profit that she makes in week 1, profit that she makes in week 2, profit that she makes in week 3. If we get a negative, okay, that tells us that she made a loss. Okay, after that, guys, we just know that we're going to just add up all the profits together, and then the answer that we'll get will then show that she made a loss of 200 rand. Okay, so before we even determine the profits that she made in week 1, 2, and 3, how do we determine the profits, guys? Okay, we already know. If you want to determine profit, guys, the formula that we used, remember in the previous video tutorial, okay, how we basically determined the profits from selling the cell phones. What we did, we took the selling price minus the cost price, right? And I also explained that that selling price minus the cost price, right, is the same as you just saying it's your income minus the cost, right? And in this case, your profit is the same as just saying your income minus your expenses. Okay, so we're gonna just take to get your profit. The profit is equal to your income. Okay, so for us to be able to get the profit that Miss Jenna made in all the 3 weeks, we're just going to use the formula. Profit is equal to your income minus your expenses. Okay, this is the formula that we're going to use. Okay, so let's calculate the profits that she made in week 1. Okay, so let's have a look. In week 1, we are told that she repaired, okay, 5 pairs of shoes. Okay, so we're going to look at the table here and we're going to see where she repaired 5 pairs of shoes. Okay, so we see here where she repaired 5 pairs of shoes, it was here, right? Okay, and then what were the income? So what was her income and what was her expenses then in week 1, right? So we can see that her income is 375 for week 1 and her expenses was 775. Okay, so for us to then get our profit, we're just going to take the 375 minus 775. So we can already see that, okay, in week 1, she worked at a loss. You can see that her expenses are more than her income, okay? So she was working at a loss in week 1, okay? But we can prove that as well with the formula that we are going to use, okay? Remember profit, okay? And we already said that her income, right, for week 1 is just 375 minus her expenses for week 1 is 775. Okay, if you punch this into your calculator, you will see that in week 1 she made a loss of 400 rand. Okay, so we can just write it as a loss of 400 rand. Okay, let's find out what is happening in week 2. Okay, so we're still using the same formula. Profits is equal to income minus expenses, right? So what is her profit? Okay, what happened in week 2? We are told that in week 2 she repaid 10 pairs of shoes, right? So that means that in week 2 we are here. This is our week 2. Okay, because we see here it represents the 10 pairs of shoes that she repaired. Okay, all right, so we can see that in week 2, right, Miss Jenna's income was 750 and her expenses was 900. Still here we see that Miss Jenna's expenses are way more than her income. So we can see that also in week 2, right, her business was working at a loss. Okay, but you can still prove that by obviously using this formula of profits is equal to income minus expenses, right? In week 2, her income was 750 and her expenses were 900, right? If you punch this into your calculator, you'll get that you get negative 150, right? So that means that, okay, her business was working or obtained a loss of 150 in the second week. All right, and then lastly, all that we need to do is we need to then determine her profit or her loss, right, in the third week. So okay, what is the income, what is the expenses for her week 3? We're told that in week 3 she repaid 20 pairs of shoes, and remember we already calculated that value for A there. Okay, right, so we already know what the expenses are or were for week 3. Okay, so her expenses for week 3, we calculated them to be 1,150. Okay, all that we need to do now is obviously take your income minus your expenses to determine her profit. And we can already see that in week 3, right, Miss Jenna basically obtained a profit. Why? Because her income was way more than her expenses. Okay, so her income is 1,500, sorry, minus the expenses, which is 1,150. If you punch this into your calculator, you will see that she made a profit of 350. However, guys, we are not done. Okay, the question asked us to show, right, that her business made a loss of 200, okay, during the 3 weeks. So how can we basically determine whether her business made a loss, right? We can just then take that. What was the total profit for the 3 weeks? Okay, to get the total profit for the 3 weeks, we're going to add the profit that we obtained in week 1, which was it wasn't even a profit. Remember, it was a loss. So we're going to take the loss of negative 400, right? And then we're going to subtract also still the loss of negative, or the loss of 150, and we are going to add the profit because this is a positive value, so we're going to add that 350. If we obtain a negative value, that tells us that she obtained a loss, right? If we get a positive value, that tells us that she basically got a profit. Okay, so if you type negative 400 minus 150 plus 350, you'll get that you get a negative 200. Okay, proving that, okay, proving that you can just say Jenna made a loss of 200 rand. Okay, so that is basically how you can go about proving that Miss Jenna made a loss of 200 in the 3 weeks. Okay, let us have a look at the next question. Question 4.1.3. A line graph showing the income from the repair of the shoes has been drawn on the answer sheet. Use the same grid on the answer sheet to draw another line graph showing the expenses of the repair of shoes. Okay, so we are told that we're given an answer sheet. Okay, I'm going to show you guys the answer sheet just now, right? And we're told that now this answer sheet has a line graph that shows the income that Miss Jenna gets from repairing the shoes. Okay, so on the same set of axes, what we now need to do is we need to plot the expenses that Miss Gina has from making the shoes. Okay, so that is exactly what we're going to do. So let us see what is given to us there. Okay, so this is the graph that is given to us, right? And this graph is a graph for the income and expenses for the shoe repair business. Okay, on our y-axis, so the y-axis is our vertical axis. Okay, so this is our vertical axis. This is where we've got your income and your expenses. Okay, and on your horizontal axis, that is our horizontal axis, that is where we have the number of pairs of shoes that are repaired. So we can already see that here, right, we are the line graph for our income has been drawn for us. So I'm going to put it in green so we see that there. So all that we need to do is draw the line graph for the expenses. So we are just plotting our expenses. Okay, so taking into consideration that our x-axis is represented by the number of shoes and the y-axis is represented by, in this case, our expenses. Okay, so let's just do that. Let's plot all these values quickly. Okay, so what happened? Okay, so the first value that we're going to plot, right, our x value is 0, our y value is 650. So we know that our first point that we're going to plot is 0, the x is 0, the y value is 650. The second point, the x is 5, the y value is 775. The x is 10, the y value is 900. Okay, the x is 15, the y value is 125, and so on and so forth. We're just gonna plot these points. Okay, all right, so let's start off with the first point. The x is 0. Okay, the y is 650. For you to be able to determine the different sections here, right? So just a cute tip that you guys can use. You can just take the 800, right, minus 600. So you can just take 800 minus 600. So if you take 800 minus 600, you'll get 200. Okay, then you're going to take this 200 and you're going to divide it by how many sections do we have there, right? So if I were to basically zoom this in here for you guys to see better, you'll see that you actually have, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections. Okay, so we're going to divide that 200 by 5. Okay, and if you take 200 and you divide by 5, you're going to get 40. Okay, so that means that each section there counts 40. So this is going to be 640. Okay, then 600 and this one will be 680. Okay, this one will be 720 because you take 680 and you plus 40. Then you take that 720 plus 40 will be 760. 760 plus 40 will give you 800. So that will basically help you determine the value at each of these segments. Okay, so now let's just continue to plot. Remember, we are looking for 650. So this is 0, your x is on 0, and your y is 650. So you can just say that, okay, this is 640 there. That means that our 650 is in between there. So you can just approximate and put it there. All right, so that is the point there. Okay, so I've basically approximated that my 650 is somewhere there. Okay, let's plot the next value or the next point, right? Your x is 5, but your y is 775. So we are here, the x is 5, the y is 775. This is 760 here. 775 is somewhere there. So I'm just going to approximate and put it there. Okay, the next point. Your x is 10, your y is 900. So this one is nice, hopefully. Okay, we still need to go up 5 40s. This is going to be Remember, we're going up by 40s, 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 okay? And I showed you how you can get that, okay? So it's going to be 840. This will be 840, okay? This one, 840 plus 40, 880. 880 plus 40, 920. 920 plus 40, 960. And then 1,000, okay? But remember, we just want your x is 10, your y is 900. So when I go up, that is 920. So it's probably in between there, somewhere there. Okay. Let us plot the next point, right? Our x coordinate, right, is 15. Our y coordinate is, okay, so we've got 15. That is our 15. So this is 1040, right? 1080, 1120, 1160. Okay, when you go up in 40s, okay? So we want to plot, if it's 15, so it's 10, it's 5, 10, 15, and your y is 1025. So this is 1040, 1025 is then somewhere there. All right, that's the point there. Then we want to plot now 18. How do we determine where 18 lies? Here, right? This one is easy because it's 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay, so we can see that that one block just represents 1 unit. Okay, so that means that now our 18, this is 15, this is 16, this is 17, this is 18, this is 19, 20. Okay, so our 18 is there, right? So we're just gonna find, this is your 18. We're gonna go up, so I'm just gonna zoom it out because you guys get the point now. Okay, this is our 18. You're gonna go up, 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 up. I'm just gonna draw this line so that I see where I am. Okay, and 1,000 and 1,100. Okay, this is 1060, 1000. So 1100 is probably somewhere there. Okay, so I'm gonna put my point there. Okay, so 1100 is somewhere there. All right, let us plot the last point. Okay, the x coordinate is 20, the y coordinate is 1150. 1160 is there. Okay, 1120 is there. 1150, therefore it's in between these two values there. Okay, it's between 120, it's between 1120 and 1160. So that's that there, somewhere there. Okay, then all that we need to do, guys, remember we want to draw a line graph. We need to now connect our points, right? Using a line, using a ruler, not your freehand. So we can see that, okay, those are all our points. Okay, that was that point there, that is that point there, that was that there, and that is that point there. All right. So we are basically done now with that section. We have drawn the line graph that represents our expenses. So please also write, this is your expenses. All right. Okay, so we've done question 4.1.3. Question 4.1.4 says use the graph to determine the number of pair of shoes at break-even point. Okay, so remember, guys, when we basically doing a break-even analysis, right? A break-even analysis is a graphical technique. So we use a line graph to help us determine at which point is the business making a profit, at which point is the business making a loss, right? So once you determine that point, that break-even point, then you'll be able to determine where the business makes a profit or a loss. Okay, and the break-even point, right, is the point where their income line graph and the expenses line graph intersect each other or cut each other, right? And in this point, we see that at this point here, right, your income line graph and your expenses line graph intersect each other, they cut each other. Okay, therefore this is our break even point. Okay, break even. Okay, meaning that I'm just adding additional information here. Okay, what would this mean? Okay, if you basically look at your x-axis here, right, we already know that this is 11, 12, 13. Okay, so I'm just gonna say this is 13 here, right? It means that, okay, at this part here, right, Miss Jenna is making a profit. Okay, at this part here, Miss Jenna is making a loss, right? Meaning that if she sells less than go down, okay, if we go down from this point, if she sells less than 13 shoes, okay, then she's breaking at a loss, okay. But if she sells more than 13 shoes, then her business starts to make a profit, okay. So that is how we use the break-even point. It helps us determine whether the business is working at a loss or whether the business is working at a profit, okay. So that's why this point is very important. However, guys, this question is not asking you to basically do a break-even analysis of the graphs that are given, right? It just wants you to determine the break-even point, right? 13. Okay, so we actually saw that, okay, from using the graph, what would be the number of pair of shoes at break-even point, okay. So here they don't want the break-even point, they just want you to determine the number of pairs of shoes at break-even point. And from here, guys, we already saw that the number of pairs of shoes at break-even point is just equal to 13 pairs of shoes. And we are basically done. So question 4.1.4, it's 13 pairs of shoes at break. Okay, and we are basically done with question 4.1.
That is it, guys, and I'll see you guys on my next upload, Distance Learning with Lee, where I make learning mathematics super easy. Bye, guys.